What if the reason your life feels heavy, scattered, and out of control is not because you lack talent, but because you have never truly learned discipline at the level it was originally designed for? Most people spend their lives chasing motivation. They wait for a feeling to arrive before they act. They hope tomorrow will be easier than today, but deep down you already know the truth. Motivation fades, energy disappears, and excuses quietly take over when no one is watching. This is why so many people stay stuck for years without real change. Not because they are incapable, but because they have never built a system strong enough to hold them when their emotions collapse. There is an ancient truth hidden in the way warriors once lived. The samurai did not rely on inspiration. They did not wait to feel ready. They built a life governed by discipline so strict, so intentional that weakness had no space to grow. Their power was not in their swords, it was in their minds, and their minds were trained through repeated discomfort, structure, and control. Modern life has removed that structure. Everything is designed for comfort, instant entertainment, instant rewards, instant escape, but comfort slowly destroys direction. It weakens attention, clouds thinking, and makes even small challenges feel overwhelming. You may not notice it happening, but over time, your ability to focus, to commit, to follow through it quietly declines. The samurai understood something most people ignore today. Discipline is not punishment, it is protection. It protects your future self from the regret of wasted time. It protects your mind from chaos. It protects your identity from collapse when life becomes difficult. Without discipline, you become a reaction to your environment. With discipline, you become the creator of your direction. This is where everything begins to shift, because the first discipline is not about doing more, it is about deciding differently. It is about choosing structure over chaos, even when chaos feels easier. It is about setting rules for yourself that you do not break, even when no one is watching, even when nothing forces you to. Most people underestimate how powerful this becomes. A single disciplined decision repeated daily starts to reshape identity. You stop being someone who tries, you become someone who follows through. And that shift changes everything. Your confidence grows not from success, but from self-trust, and self-trust only comes from keeping promises to yourself. If you continue listening closely, what you will begin to understand is that discipline is not about restriction. It is about freedom. Real freedom is not doing whatever you want. Real freedom is knowing you are strong enough to do what matters, even when you do not feel like it. That is the difference between a distracted life and a powerful one. And here is why you should stay fully engaged until the end, because what you are about to learn are not just ideas. These are mental rules that can completely rewire how you think, how you act, and how you respond to pressure. If you apply even a few of them, your relationship with focus, strength, and consistency will begin to change in a way you can actually feel in your daily life. But it starts here. With one understanding, your life is not shaped by what you know. It is shaped by what you consistently do when no one is forcing you. And if your life is truly shaped by what you consistently do when no one is forcing you, then ask yourself this: where does your attention go when no one is watching? Because attention is not just focus, it is identity in motion. Whatever you repeatedly pay attention to is slowly becoming your life, and most people never realize how silently this process happens. They believe their future is decided by big moments, big decisions, or sudden opportunities, but the truth is far simpler and far more uncomfortable. Your future is being built in the quiet seconds where your mind drifts without control. The samurai understood this with absolute clarity. They treated attention like a sacred resource, something that could either sharpen the mind or destroy it. They did not allow their thoughts to wander endlessly without direction. Every moment of awareness had purpose. Every action carried weight, because they knew that a scattered mind produces a scattered life. Today, distraction is not occasional, it is constant. Your mind is pulled in 1,000 directions before you even realize it. Notifications break your thinking. Endless content rewires your patience. Quick entertainment replaces deep focus. And slowly, without warning, your ability to stay present weakens. You start feeling like you are always busy but never truly moving forward. This is not a lack of intelligence. It is a lack of control over attention, and here is the deeper truth most people avoid. If your attention is not controlled by you, it will be controlled by everything else. Trends will shape your thoughts, algorithms will shape your emotions, external noise will shape your identity, and you will slowly become a reaction to the world instead of a creator within it. The samurai trained attention like a weapon, not by doing more but by removing everything unnecessary. They practiced silence not as escape but as discipline. They observed their own thoughts without immediately obeying them. They created space between impulse and action, and in that space, strength was born. Because when you control attention, you control perception, and when you control perception, you control decisions, and when you control decisions, you control direction. This is the hidden chain that builds or breaks every human life. Most people never break free from mental noise because they are addicted to stimulation. Stillness feels uncomfortable. Silence feels empty, but in reality, those moments are where real power returns. That is where you begin to hear yourself again without interference. That is where clarity begins to form. You do not need more information. You need more control over where your mind goes when nothing is demanding it. Because every unnecessary thought you entertain is silently stealing energy from the life you are trying to build. And here is what makes this discipline so powerful. The moment you start reclaiming your attention, even in small ways, everything begins to shift. Your thoughts slow down, your decisions become clearer, your emotions stop controlling every reaction. You start noticing patterns you were blind to before. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming aware, because awareness is the beginning of every transformation. Without it, you are simply drifting through habits you never chose. With it, you begin to interrupt the cycle. And once you see this clearly, you can never unsee it. Every distraction becomes a choice point. Every moment becomes an opportunity to either strengthen your mind or weaken it. And slowly, without forcing anything, you begin to take your power back. And once you begin to reclaim your attention, something uncomfortable starts to happen. You start seeing clearly how much you have been avoiding, not just distractions but discomfort itself, the moments you delayed, the decisions you postponed. The hard work you kept pushing into later, and that is where the next discipline reveals itself with brutal honesty, because attention alone is not enough. Even a focused mind can still choose comfort over growth. Even a disciplined thinker can still avoid pain, and this is where most people stop evolving. They think awareness is the finish line when in reality it is only the beginning of pressure. The samurai understood something most modern minds refuse to accept. Growth does not happen in comfort. It happens in resistance, in pressure, in moments where everything inside you wants to stop but you continue anyway. They did not build strength by avoiding difficulty. They built strength by entering it willingly. Today, discomfort is treated like danger. The moment something feels hard, people retreat. The moment effort increases, they switch direction. The moment emotional resistance appears, they seek escape. But every escape creates a pattern, and that pattern becomes identity. A life shaped by avoidance will always feel fragile, no matter how safe it looks from the outside. Discomfort is not your enemy. It is the signal that you are expanding beyond your current limits. But the modern mind misinterprets that signal as something wrong, so instead of pushing through, it pulls back. And in that pulling back, potential collapses quietly, without resistance, without warning. The samurai trained themselves to stay inside discomfort longer than instinct allowed. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood its purpose. Discomfort sharpens the mind, it removes hesitation, it exposes weakness that comfort hides. And most importantly, it builds endurance that cannot be faked. When you stay in difficulty instead of escaping it, something powerful begins to change. At first, resistance feels overwhelming. Your mind demands relief, your body searches for exit points, but if you remain, something shifts. The intensity does not disappear, but your reaction to it weakens. And that is the moment strength is formed. This is where transformation actually begins, not when life becomes easier, but when you stop running from what feels hard. Because every avoided challenge does not disappear, it waits, it accumulates. and eventually it returns stronger than before. Most people live their entire lives negotiating with discomfort instead of facing it. They choose temporary relief over long-term strength. They choose ease today and pay for it tomorrow in the form of regret, stagnation, and self-doubt. But discipline breaks this cycle by changing one simple behavior: staying. Staying when it gets uncomfortable, staying when progress slows, staying when results are not visible yet, staying when everything inside you is asking you to quit. That is where identity is rebuilt. Because you do not become strong by thinking about strength, you become strong by enduring what weakens others. And every moment you stay inside discomfort without escaping it, you are quietly rewriting who you are becoming. This is not about pushing endlessly. It is about refusing to break at the first sign of resistance. It is about understanding that discomfort is temporary, but the strength it builds is permanent. And once your mind learns that you can survive what you used to avoid, your entire relationship with challenge begins to shift. You stop fearing hard things. You start recognizing them as training. And slowly, without forcing it, your identity begins to change. You are no longer someone who avoids difficulty. You become someone who can carry it, and once you stop avoiding difficulty and start carrying it, something even deeper is tested within you. Not your strength, but your control. Not your endurance, but your reaction. Because even a disciplined body and a resilient mind can collapse when emotion takes control. And this is where the next discipline reveals itself with absolute clarity, because discomfort alone does not destroy people. Emotion does, impulse does, ego does. The moments where logic is replaced by reaction, the moments where pride speaks louder than awareness, the moments where fear decides faster than thought. This is where most progress silently breaks apart. The samurai understood this at a level most people never reach. They did not try to eliminate emotion. They trained themselves to observe it without being ruled by it. They understood that emotion is not the enemy, uncontrolled emotion is. There's a space between feeling and action, and in that space lies power. Most people do not live in that space. They react instantly. Anger appears and words are spoken without thought. Fear appears and decisions shrink instantly. Pride appears and clarity disappears. And later, when the moment passes, regret takes its place. This cycle repeats so often that people begin to believe it is normal. But it is not normal. It is untrained behavior. The samurai built emotional discipline by slowing down their internal world. Not suppressing emotion, but witnessing it fully before responding. They trained themselves to feel deeply without losing direction. That is not weakness, that is mastery. Because control is not the absence of emotion. Control is the ability to choose response instead of being forced into reaction. When ego takes control, perception becomes distorted. You stop seeing reality as it is and start seeing it as you want it to be. That distortion creates conflict, poor decisions, and unnecessary suffering. The samurai treated ego like noise. Something that clouds judgment if left unchecked, so they learned to step back internally even in moments of pressure. This kind of discipline is rare today because modern life rewards instant reaction, quick replies, fast opinions, immediate emotional expression, but speed without awareness leads to chaos. And chaos repeated over time becomes identity. Emotional discipline is not about becoming cold, it is about becoming clear. It is about noticing the rise of emotion without surrendering to it. It is about creating distance between what you feel and what you do, and in that distance, everything changes. Because once you are no longer ruled by emotion, you begin to regain control of your decisions. You stop saying things you do not mean. You stop making choices you regret. You stop being pulled in every direction by temporary feelings, and instead you begin to act from a place of stability. This is where real inner strength begins to form. Not when life is calm, but when you remain calm inside life. Not when emotions disappear, but when they no longer control the outcome of your actions. And the more you practice this awareness, the more you notice something powerful. Emotional intensity still arises, but it no longer defines you. It passes through you instead of directing you. And in that shift, you begin to experience a level of mental stability that most people never reach. because mastery is not about removing emotion from life. It is about ensuring emotion no longer removes you from yourself, and once emotion no longer removes you from yourself, something final is left to be tested. Not your awareness, not your endurance. Not your control, but your ability to act, because even a disciplined mind, even a stable heart, even a focused attention means nothing if action does not follow. And this is where everything either collapses again or finally comes alive, because understanding without execution is just illusion. Awareness without movement is just delay. Control without action is just unused potential, and this is where most people quietly fail without even realizing it. They learn, they reflect, they understand, but they do not move. The samurai did not live in thought, they lived in execution. Every lesson was proven through action. Every discipline was tested in reality, not in imagination, not in planning, but in immediate response to life itself. They understood something most people forget. The mind can lie, but action never does. You can think you are disciplined for years, but the truth only appears when you are forced to act without motivation, when there is no inspiration, when there is no emotional push, when there is only resistance and silence. That is the real test, and that is where identity is either confirmed or exposed as false. Most people wait for perfect conditions, perfect timing, perfect energy, perfect clarity. But perfection never arrives, and waiting becomes a hidden form of self-sabotage. It feels safe, but it slowly erodes power, because every moment of delay reinforces hesitation. And hesitation becomes a habit stronger than intention. The samurai broke this cycle by removing the gap between thought and action. If something needed to be done, it was done, not later. Not after analysis paralysis, but immediately with full presence. This created a mind that did not argue with itself endlessly. It created a life built on execution instead of hesitation. And this is where true discipline reveals its final form, not in knowing what to do, but in doing it without negotiation. Because every time you negotiate with yourself, you weaken trust in your own decisions, but every time you act despite resistance, you strengthen that trust. And self-trust is the foundation of every powerful life. You are not shaped by what you intend. You are shaped by what you repeatedly execute when no one is watching, when nothing is forcing you, and when everything inside you is asking for delay. That is the moment where identity is rebuilt or broken. Action creates clarity, waiting creates confusion, movement creates direction, stagnation creates doubt. And the longer you stay in an action, the heavier everything feels, not because life becomes harder, but because your own mind loses confidence in itself. But the moment you begin to act, even imperfectly, something shifts immediately. Energy returns, clarity increases, resistance starts to weaken. Not because conditions changed, but because you changed your position within them. You stopped being passive and became active again. And this is the real turning point most people miss their entire lives. Discipline is not built in theory, it is built in motion. Every small action taken consistently becomes a signal to your mind that you are no longer someone who hesitates. You are someone who follows through. Because in the end, transformation is not a single decision. It is a pattern of repeated action until the old identity no longer has power over you. And when that old identity begins to lose its grip, something unsettling starts to happen. You can no longer return to ignorance. You can no longer pretend that delay is harmless. You can no longer accept excuses without feeling their cost. Because once you have seen how discipline reshapes a mind, comfort starts to feel like slow self-destruction. This is the point where everything becomes irreversible. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because your awareness has expanded beyond the version of you that once tolerated weakness, and now every choice carries weight. Every hesitation feels louder, every distraction feels more expensive, because you can finally see what it is taking from you. Most people never reach this level of clarity because they stop halfway through transformation. They learn a few ideas, feel inspired for a short time, then return to old patterns when life gets noisy again. But discipline was never meant to be temporary. It was never meant to be emotional. It was meant to be structural, something that remains even when motivation disappears completely. The samurai did not depend on feeling ready, they depended on repetition. They understood that identity is not built in moments of inspiration, but in moments of resistance where action continues without emotional support. That is where real transformation is locked. Because if your behavior only changes when you feel strong, then you are not strong. You are dependent on mood, and anything dependent on mood is unstable by design. Real discipline removes dependency on feeling and replaces it with structure that does not break under pressure. This is where the deeper psychology of change reveals itself. Your brain does not transform through information. It transforms through repeated behavior under consistent resistance. Every time you act against hesitation, you are literally rewiring what feels normal. What once felt difficult begins to feel expected. What once required effort begins to feel automatic. And slowly, without dramatic moments, your identity begins to shift. You stop identifying as someone who struggles with discipline. You stop describing yourself through limitations. You stop negotiating with your own potential because your actions start speaking louder than your old beliefs ever did. This is the hidden power most people never experience. Not sudden change, but gradual replacement of identity through action. You do not become a new person by deciding it once. You become a new person by refusing to act like the old one repeatedly. And as this process deepens, something powerful stabilizes inside you. You stop being easily shaken by external circumstances because your sense of control is no longer dependent on outcomes. It is dependent on consistency, and consistency is something no external force can take away from you. Even setbacks begin to lose their emotional weight. Not because they stop happening, but because they no longer define your direction. You stop seeing failure as identity and start seeing it as feedback. You stop seeing delay as defeat and start seeing it as correction. This is the level where discipline becomes invisible, not because it disappears, but because it becomes who you are. You no longer try to be disciplined, you simply act in alignment with it. There is no internal debate, there is no emotional negotiation, there is only movement. And in that state, life stops feeling like something happening to you and starts feeling like something being shaped by you, not through force, but through consistency. Not through perfection, but through repetition. Because in the end, discipline is not about becoming someone extraordinary. It is about removing everything ordinary that keeps you from becoming what you already have the potential to be.